welcome to the CNBC TV 18 special. In July this year, India will be celebrating 25 years since it adopted the paths to economic liberalization. A clutch of pernicious government regulations that choked private sector investment was thrown into the dustbin, and India opened up many sectors to foreign capital for the first time. It was indeed an idea whose time had come. A new book that is celebrating those landmark reforms has just been released, highlighting how that singular economic act has led to widespread social change and also change in consumer behavioral patterns. On this special today, I have the man who has compiled and put the book together, Kartikeya Kompella. Also on the show are two contributors to the book who have seen India change closely in the last 25 years. Rama Bijapurkar, well-known market strategy consultant and author of books like We Are Like That Only, Understanding the Logic of Consumer India. And also on the show is Damodar Mal, who created the DMart chain of stores and is currently the CEO of Reliance Retail. And like Rama, has also authored a book, Supermarket Wala, Secrets of Winning Consumer India. Thank you very much for joining us here on the CNBC TV 18 special. Let me come to you first, Kartikeya, since you've taken this task of putting this book together and compiling it. The basic hypothesis of the book that you're trying to indicate is the fact that how this economic move to liberalize and open up the economy actually led to a new social milieu. Tell us and talk to us a little bit more about this.
Yeah, in 2013, I realized that I had spent half my life in pre-liberalized India and half in post-liberalized India. And in many ways, it felt that I lived in two different countries, both called India. And I realized that the change was fairly significant and profound, and that this was largely because when the economy opened up, I think it also opened up our minds through exposure to a whole lot of new things. So businesses and consumers opened their minds, and once your mind starts seeing and accepting new things, everything around you changes. So what is acceptable in terms of fashion, in terms of lifestyle, in terms of how you want to work, how you want to do business, everything changed. So this was fairly profound, and I wanted some way of capturing this.
Right. And I think you've been ably, you've done that. Rama, come in on that, because, you have constantly argued, for the past many years that how Indian consumers are so distinctive. In this work also, you've called the Indian consumer the many-splendored beast. What is it that makes us Indians as consumers so different from what you see in other, and especially in the developed markets?
Yeah, I've often been asked whether we Indians wear our noses on our ears and whether water flows uphill in India, and why are we so distinctive. I think if you take just some examples of the time and space where any market is, the time and space in which a market is often like no other. So our per capita income today is what the United States had in the late 19th century. So in the late 19th century, sorry. And so as a result of that, you will, when you say per capita income drives choices, it doesn't make any sense. Our consumer has been born in a world where high tech came in before high touch went away. So we're really monster consumers wanting to be recognized both in the high touch world as well as in the high tech world. If you look at where this consumer base has grown up, this is probably the first large consumer base, in addition to China, that has basically grown up after the internet, after the mobile, after all those good things came in. Right. So just as, even if you take something as simple as retailing, Damodar, I don't mean retailing is simple, but if you take the example of retailing, I think retailing in America was when was conceived when Detroit was strong and gasoline was cheap, and we hadn't discovered that the world was being ruined yet in terms of the planet. So if their central nervous system for retail was actually the roadways, our central nervous system is actually the cell phone, and we've gone digital with a vengeance. So I think there are many, many differences, in addition to the fact that we are a large economy of lots of modest income people. The more developed markets are a large economy of a few, relatively fewer people who earn a lot. So everything about business economics and approach is completely different.
In fact, I'm going to come back to a point that you've also often made, is that the failure of public goods and the impact that has had also on the consumer patterns. But Mr. Mal, come in on that, because retail is clearly a post-1991 story. And how have you seen consumer behavioral patterns change? Because you've actually given very interesting anecdotes in your article. Just in brief, take us through some of them.
Yeah, I think the advent of modern retail, first the physical modern retail, which is supermarkets, and now the digital modern retail, which is the e-commerce bit, actually coincides with the entire journey of the 25 years we are talking about of post-liberalization India. People don't live their incomes with their bank balance around their necks. Yeah, the good feeling, the well-being is actually expressed through consumer choices that people make. The marketplace runs the theater of choice for the consumers, and that's where we get to see expression of people through consumption choices of their well-being as it is. And as I put in the chapter, there are three things exchanged in a bazaar: goods and services, money in various forms, and information or conversation. And all the three have changed substantially in the last one generation, which is the 25-year period that we are talking about. And it's fascinating because even as we speak, it's being reformed all over again.
Right, because the basic relationship that used to exist there, Mr. Mal, between the buyer and the shopkeeper has more or less ended, because now it's very, very impersonal. So how is that playing out? I mean, the fact that, you've also talked about this exchange of information that used to ideally take place between the shopkeeper and the buyer, that has also ended. What has been the implication of that?
When we were growing up, the shopkeeper was actually part of the neighborhood, part of the community, and me and the shopkeeper's son probably went to the same school together. But the basic economic equation was very disempowering for the consumer. There were shortages. The shopkeeper was in a position of command. The entire buy and sell relationship was very linear between them. Compared to that today, yes, the shopkeeper uncle has vanished partially, at least. But all my choices are around me. As a consumer, I'm in the center, and the world of choices is around me. I get an information. I can share it with my peer group. I don't have to depend on brands or the retailers to tell me what is good for me. So that way, everything has changed, and so has the shopkeeper uncle. And I think the kind of innovation that we see, the kind of adaptation to digital communication that the neighborhood shopkeeper is also doing is fascinating.
Right, Rama, this whole question of what makes the Indian customer, the consumer, so distinct from what you see in other parts of the countries. Have MNCs been able to grasp that? Have they been able to actually finally acknowledge the fact that the business plans and models that have worked in the West cannot be blindly sort of supplanted in India, because the context, which is what you're seeing, is so very different?
Well, we're seeing the discourse changing. I mean, I have a simple metric of how many multinational board meetings are held in India. I think that number is on the increase. How many are willing to not throw you out of the room when you make the point that perhaps they need a more finer make for India strategy? So I think intellectually there is some acceptance that this is different. But having said that, I think that most multinationals still say, what is the extension market for the strategy, the assets, the R&D, the products that I already have elsewhere? And if I sweat them in this market, how much more do I get? Now, that's still good news, because as you know, even the richest 20% of India is often larger than many countries in the developed world, especially if you look at Europe and things like that. So they are getting, I think, pretty good response to incremental growth from sweating their strategy. Have a lot of them actually gone ahead and developed different strategies for this market, leverage their competencies to say, I will do different products for this market? The answer is a little bit mixed. I think we're seeing a little bit of go-to-market change. So instead of targeting big beauty parlors, you may target small ones. You may actually figure some jugaad for a cold chain. But I think by and large, multinationals are content, and one can't really blame them, I suppose, in some way, because the richest 20% of India is really
Still a
discontinuously richer.
volume.
They're discontinuously richer. But the rest of the market is actually fairly large. So where multinational business plans actually go wrong is when the strategies for T20, as I call it, and the business plan numbers are based on the the double trillion dollar economy.
Right.
And that's where the numbers don't match.
Right. Before I take a break, Karthik, come in on that. What has been the big takeaway for you while you were compiling the book? You know, you've had experts from different fields coming and contributing to this. What is the big message that, you know, that you perhaps learned, which you did not know when you actually ventured to put a book together like this?
Yeah, so essentially, I think that the fact that almost everything has changed, whether you look at education and the way people are consuming education, or the way education is being marketed, to attitudes towards love and relationships, to there's about nothing which is untouched. Yeah, there are areas which are similar and familiar, but there's nothing which has been untouched anywhere. In the book, we have 14 chapters ranging from branding to advertising to women's rights and evolution of women and relationships.
Yes.
And it's pretty fascinating. Just the fact that cell phones has made relationships far more easier, because people can leave home and know that they can still be in touch with their family because of better cell phones. And once they leave their homes, then they are able to get into relationships with people which otherwise may not have been possible. And
absolutely.
So the gamut of areas that have changed is phenomenal. It's really fascinating.
Indeed, it is fascinating, but just will request my guests to hold their thoughts for just a bit, because we need to slip into a quick break. On the other side, that's lots more on the CNBC TV 18 special. Stay tuned.